thank you again. Please go ahead and just continue having your lunches. We've chosen to sacrifice our lunch till it gets cold, so but we'll be back after it when we get through here. Intimidation and public relations. We went through some things this last winter in Eastern Oregon that we wouldn't want to wish on any community. And I think one of the things that happened there was many of us eyes were opened up to what intimidation really means and what things can happen through the media and public relations tools that are used either on your behalf or against you as a group or an individual. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to start off a little bit about the different types of intimidation that we run into and I see coming in on a daily basis from around the West. The first and probably the most important, and these are subjective issues, and they're being subjective, and they're probably more contentious about different opinions from different people. So keep that in mind as we go through this. We're going to try to tell you as objectively how we see these things and how they have affected us in our communities. The first thing that I would like to talk about is federal law enforcement, intimidation practices by the federal law enforcement. And the things that they are likely to abuse if your community gets into a situation or your project gets in a situation where federal law enforcement is involved. The first thing that they will try to take away from you is your First Amendment rights to free speech and the right of free assembly. And they will use that directly against you, or they will use it indirectly through your local agencies or your local elected officials. The second thing that happens is they use the Second Amendment against you to keep people from associating with you, and the Second Amendment, your Second Amendment rights are fully enforced, as far as I know, across the country. What they will do is they will talk about, well, these are armed, these folks are armed, or they may be armed, or you better be careful not to associate with them, because there may be some threat of armed confrontation. Carrying arms and using them is a way of life for most of rural America. I can't imagine going down the street and seeing one of our local ranchers in his ranch pickup that doesn't have some kind of firearm in his pickup for shooting coyotes or predators or snakes or whatever that might be. But our use of firearms is on a regular basis in rural America, and it's an issue that we should work hard to protect. The next amendment that you're going to see violated is maybe a search and seizure under the Fourth Amendment. We've had many issues in our community over this past 6 months where people have been stopped for no apparent reason, their vehicles searched, their persons searched, and without due cause or without the proper paperwork being applied. So that's something that affects them very personally, and we have seen the abuse of the Fourth Amendment in terms of coming onto lands to look for supposed threats from people, using their First Amendment rights or their Second Amendment rights. The next one is the Fifth Amendment, and that Fifth Amendment basically talks about the taking of your personal property without due process or compensation. I think Ramona talked about what your real property is, and we're going to talk about that much more tomorrow. But real property are the things that you have as a personal asset, and we see the Fifth Amendment as a taking, not only in your personal property, but as your right to function as an individual within the system that is established around us by the federal government. We've had, during this process, a difficulty getting people who are good people who believe the way we do in terms of your rights and management of our lands, absolutely scared to death to step up and say what they believe in and what they know is affecting them on their particular resource, whether it's timber sales, allotments, and or grazing rights and haying rights on federal grounds. If they know that if they speak up, that there's a risk that their entire operation could go down if they lose those ties they have to those federal programs. What we're trying to teach people is that those are their rights and they cannot be taken away without abuse of the Fifth Amendment. That is the right to due process and compensation. Sorry again, my hay fever just going crazy. We get intimidation, as I mentioned, by the federal law enforcement on local law enforcement. Because you're the feds, the local law enforcement many times thinks that you are the one that they are the ones that has to be subsidiary or subordinate to the federal law enforcement. That's not necessarily the case at all, and we believe the sheriff's office should be the local controlling force. But the pressure comes from the federal government to local elected officials who oftentimes then try to intimidate or force the local law enforcement to subordinating to the federal officials. We've got, as we were putting this program together and I was looking for speakers, we looked far and wide. And some of the agencies, we wanted to have a good split between private sector and public sector speakers here. And we tried very hard. And one of the areas where we had much difficulty was the wildlife area. I started off, that was one of my tasks, started off with local federal trapper. I thought, well, he's got boots on the ground, he's intelligent, he knows the issues, he knows the predators, he knows what's happening, what's working, and what isn't working. Unfortunately, he was not allowed to speak here. I went to another one. He directed me to one higher up the ladder in the agencies, and he wanted to speak here because he knew the issues. He knows, the sage-grouse issue mainly we were going to focus on. He was not able to speak because his supervisors wouldn't let him speak here either. It went all the way to the head of the federal agency for predator control in a state, all the way to the state director. He wanted to speak here because he believes the way we believe, and he was not allowed to speak. So the intimidation of government agencies on their own employees is a significant factor and one of the reasons why we don't have more agency people here, because there are a lot of good agency people out there that would like to talk about and like to better their management practices. But for many reasons internal to the agencies, we cannot count on them to put people forward that will tell the truth as they see it. When we have intimidation by large groups of employees on businesses and individuals. We've had a situation where we've had groups say, well, if you back the group that's trying to support transition of federal grounds to state and county ownership, if you back that group with your business, we as government employees will not do business with you. That's a form of intimidation that every businessman in every community faces and sees it on an ongoing basis when you have a contentious issue in front of you. That's something to be very much aware of as an intimidation. We've got intimidation of employer on employee. Some private businesses say, well, if you support this organization, this group in their work, then you are at risk of losing your job in this business because we don't want to be seen as being contentious. That's a form of intimidation that is very active out there. We've had in our community this last year, we've had intimidation of parents and teachers and coaches harassing kids of the people who are out there trying to make some of these changes and make better management practice and get the word out about what their rights were. This is something that you wouldn't think about normally, but it filters right through our schools and into the thoughts and minds of our kids that they're somehow doing something wrong by standing up and speaking, as their parents believe. So that's something to watch out for. We've had cases where even in people's individual churches, if you stood up and voiced your true opinions and your position, we've had churches say that, well, if you do this, then you will lose your position in leadership in our church group. That's a form of intimidation that people don't often think about. I'm going to talk about intimidation by mainstream media. I'm going to give you an example. We had an issue in our community where we were supporting a person who was going to be going out to prison for infractions that we felt were not, the punishment did not justify the crime by any means. And we had a gathering at their place, and for whatever reason, the people in front of the house were clapping and applauding him and saying to this gentleman that they supported him, and he went like this, thumbs up to the crowd. There was a reporter from a statewide newspaper there, was doing this story. They took a picture of this gentleman with his thumbs up, and the heading underneath of it was, "Militia takes over refuge." And I saw that instantly on the internet, and I got on the phone. This was taken completely out of context. He was showing thumbs up to the people that were supporting him before he went off to prison, and the caption said, "Militia takes over refuge," with him with his thumbs up in the picture on the story. That infuriated me because I knew it was taken completely out of context. It was bad journalism, it was yellow journalism, it was a fraud. And so I got on the phone with this particular reporter and said, "You retract that right away." But you know how today's media is. Instantly, it was out on Facebook, it was everywhere. How do you retract something that the news media puts out there after it's out there? Within a half an hour, that picture was pulled, never to be seen again, but it was already in people's YouTubes, it was everywhere. That's the kind of intimidation the media can put on you if they choose to misrepresent what your goals and what your actions are. The last one I'm going to mention here is social media. Social media, and like in our small community, we no longer have a radio station. So we have no way to communicate. We've got a weekly paper which sometimes covers the issues, sometimes it does not, but we have no radio station. So our community is becoming more and more dependent upon Facebook and the other social media. There is no accountability on social media whatsoever. And what's said there can travel around the world in a matter of nanoseconds and be a misrepresentation of your community or yourself as an individual. So watch this. I don't know what we can do about social media, but I myself limit myself from it unless there's something that's of importance that I want to get out there, like an event like this, or some very important issue that is factual and I know can't be misused or abused. So what we can do, these are the things that I would suggest and as have come up through our committees in the community there. What to do about these kinds of intimidation. Don't go to any hearing, decision-making meeting, or compliance review with an agency by yourself. Do not do it. Take notes or recordings on all significant issues discussed at any meeting with an agency or law enforcement where discretionary or disciplinary action may be taken or reviewed. Do not volunteer to talk with law enforcement on what you may or may not know about any group or individual being investigated. Remember, your Fifth Amendment rights are there to protect the innocent, not to protect the guilty. They're there to protect you. Do never feel, and I've talked to many attorneys about it, never feel bad about using the Fifth Amendment to limit your exposure to law enforcement. Their job is out there to trip you up if they can, and they will. So don't volunteer to speak with them, because they're not going to take your stuff as you know it. They're going to take what you use, and then they're going to go to your neighbor and say to him the same kind of things. If there's a difference in what your stories are, all of a sudden both of you or either one of you are liars. And I'll use that against you, so be careful of that. Have a camera or recorder with you and use it if something doesn't seem right anytime you're confronted by a government official. One of the last things, comply with any law enforcement order at the time, and then immediately use your documentation to get redress when you feel you have been violated. The last one, know your county sheriff. And this is one I think is the most important tool that we've got, is our county sheriff. Know your county sheriff and make sure he understands his rights as sheriff and your constitutional rights as an individual. And if he doesn't, vote him out of office. That's all I have to say. We're going to turn it over to Erin. She's got some specific things she'd like to talk to you about intimidation, and we hope you enjoy your lunch. It'll stay there, I think. Just go. I think it should stay.
Okay. Hi, I'm a little nervous, so excuse me if I stutter. I'm Erin Maupin. I'm a rancher's wife, a mom. I live in Harney County. Our ranch is about 40 miles west of Burns and in Harney County. And I'm here today to talk to you about the events that occurred during, and more specifically as the Malheur Wildlife Refuge occupation was coming to a close. First of all, I wish I had a map, but I kind of want to give you an idea of where things are situated in our county. Burns, Oregon is the only larger town that we have in Harney County, and Harney County is a huge county. And the refuge is located about 36 miles southeast of Burns on State Highway 205. And it's 13 miles east of Highway 205 on a county road called Sod House Lane. After you pass the refuge on Sod House Lane, and you go east, it becomes a gravel road for about 15 miles until you hit State Highway 78. The area is an ancient lake bed, and there's a lake there still, but it's very flat. There's some sagebrush. There's no tree cover. You can see for miles once you're out there. When the occupation occurred, it was in January. It was cold. The temperatures were well below zero. There was snow on the ground, lots of ice. From January 2nd to January 26th, the local ranchers went about their daily routines. There's snow on the ground. They had to feed cows every day. They broke ice for livestock to drink water. They went past the refuge during the occupation. People came and went. They didn't have any problems. The locals around the area were never contacted during this time by the FBI or the local county sheriff as concern for their safety. Nothing was ever mentioned to them. During this time, after January 2nd, the FBI began moving into Burns in force. They took over the Burns Municipal Airport. They began bringing in military vehicles, helicopters, planes. They set up headquarters in a junior high, which is adjacent to the county courthouse and the sheriff's office. They then, with the help of the sheriff's office and other Oregon State Police and other county sheriffs from across the state, put a blockade up that surrounded the courthouse and the sheriff's office and the neighboring junior high. There were hundreds of law enforcement personnel in Burns, but yet there was no one in rural Harney County. And I don't know if a lot of you know this, but during this time, the occupiers themselves came and went as they pleased. They came to meetings in the town of Burns. Some of them attended church on Sundays in Burns without bodyguards. And there was people, lots of press, hundreds of visitors going in and out of the refuge at will. On January 26th, all that changed. A lot of the members of the occupation were arrested. Lavoy Finicum was shot and killed as they were heading to a public meeting in neighboring Grant County. That night, roadblocks around the refuge were being started to be put up. Now, I wish I had the map because the specific area that they set these roadblocks up is puzzling to me. One roadblock was on State Highway 205. It stopped the entire state highway. It was 15 miles west of the refuge. Another was 10 miles east of the refuge on the gravel portion of Sod House Lane. Yet another was at least 25 miles south on Highway 205 at a junction of Highway 205 and a county road called Diamond Lane. What happened to locals and people just passing through at these roadblocks should never happen in America. In fact, a lot of people that I spoke to said it was more akin to Nazi Germany than rural America. I've had some friends that served in Iraq and Afghanistan honorably, and they stated to me they could not believe this. These were the roadblocks they had set up personally in a time of war in a foreign country. And I want you to remember that these roadblocks didn't just stop ranchers. They stopped nurses. They stopped tourists. They stopped everybody. And the main thing is nobody knew that these roadblocks were going to be there. There was no emergency alert system. No one knew what was happening. So I began to hear about these stories, and a friend of mine and I was shocked because we live, on the other side of Burns, and I didn't have to go through these roadblocks. But a friend of mine and I decided that this shouldn't happen here, and so we wanted to collect affidavits from people who were stopped and harassed and make a complaint. Well, we came to find out just how far the intimidation had gone. These innocent people, a lot of them, refused to sign an affidavit. They didn't want anybody to know their name. So I decided, well, what if I anonymously got your testimony on a voice recording? Some of them agreed to do that. Some of them didn't. One that said he wouldn't do that was his, if I can directly quote him, I'll try. He said, "Look at all the corruption you have in this country. Do you think them roughing up a few ranchers, pointing guns at them, handcuffing them, is going to make a difference? I don't think so, and I'm not willing to put myself or my family in jeopardy." So I got these voice recordings, and I put them together, and Trent Luce had some of them on Rural Route Radio last week, recently anyway, for people to listen to. And I'll try to talk you through some of the instances. And he only has some of the recordings. There's a lot more on his radio show. First thing that happened when you pulled up onto these roadblocks is you would hear a bullhorn, and they would be yelling at you. Well, some people couldn't hear. It's cold. You have your diesel pickup running, your heater running. They couldn't understand what they were trying to say through this bullhorn. And they would have to stop hundreds of yards away from where the actual people are. And they would stop their vehicle. You were supposed to get out with your hands in the air, with your ID above your head. Then you were to walk the hundreds of yards towards them. When you got close enough to see them, you were supposed to open up your vest or jacket, or in some cases, they had to lift their shirt to prove that you didn't have a weapon on you. And one lady, and I saw this, she said when she came upon it, there were these two armored vehicles that were parked in the road. And as she was farther back, she thought, why are there satellite dishes on top of these armored vehicles? And I thought the same thing because I saw them in town. But she said as she got up there, she realized that they were armor protecting law enforcement personnel with a machine gun trained on her as she walked up. And then there were several FBI agents that had automatic weapons pointed at him. And then at some point along the way, you were supposed to turn your back on all these weapons, these automatic weapons that were on you, and approach them backwards. They would then take your ID, they would run it through a computer system. At that same time, they would go to your vehicle, they would search it inside and out, and then they would drive your vehicle through the roadblock. In one of these situations, a gentleman, when they drove his pickup through the roadblock, the FBI agent actually ran over his own spike strip and flattened this guy's tires. The FBI paid for new tires, but this gentleman had to wait in the cold for 2 hours while Les Schwab's came, put new tires on his pickup. There was a family with 4 small children. They were going to go on vacation. They live next to the refuge. They had heard about roadblocks. They called the county sheriff and told them that they were leaving. The sheriff's office told them to go west down Sod House Lane because they couldn't drive past the refuge. They did what they were told. When they got there were guns pointed at them. The mother and the father had to get out of the vehicle. Their children, they had 4 children under the age of 3 or 4, I think. And as they were out there, they were walking towards these weapons, and then when it came time for them to turn around and walk backwards, the husband, I think it was the husband, said to the wife, or vice versa, "Oh my gosh, I hope they don't shoot us in the back while our kids are watching." They then grabbed the husband, handcuffed him, put him behind one of the FBI vehicles while the wife drove her kids through the roadblock. There was an elderly rancher and his wife coming from Diamond on Diamond Lane. They pulled up to the roadblock, and when they pulled up, they didn't know what was going on, and they could see on each other these red dots on them. And what it was laser sights from the FBI personnel. And they told him to stop. Well, this elderly man could not walk the hundreds of yards, so he creeped his vehicle forward, and at that point, the FBI became pretty aggressive and told him he was going to have to get out and walk. The gentleman tried to explain to him, "I can't walk that far," and they said, "Well, you're going to have to." So then he explained to him that I have to go by the refuge to feed my cows. The people at the one roadblock said, "Well, we'll radio the next roadblock and let them know you were coming." So they traveled the 25 miles to the next roadblock, and at that point, the same thing happened again. They went, they fed their cows, came back, same exact thing through both roadblocks again, 4 times in one day. There was another elderly couple that was on Sod House Lane, and the husband got out of the vehicle like he was told, walked up there. He said there was an FBI agent leaning over the top of a pickup once he got close with his finger on the trigger of his automatic weapon and a red dot on his gut. And he asked him to please, "I'm local, please put your guns down," and they didn't. He stood there for 30 minutes in the cold with someone pointing an automatic weapon at him with their finger on the trigger. He said, and other people have said the same thing, it was so cold they thought about putting their hands in their pockets, but they knew that if they did, there's no doubt in their mind that they would be dead today. There was an elderly woman and her son, in his 30s, I would say. She had had a stroke recently, and they were going to feed their cows. And remember, it's not like they could skip a day feeding their cows or breaking ice. It was frigid around there at this time. And so they had to get out there every day and take care of their animals or they would die. Well, she had had a stroke, and her hearing had been impaired because of the stroke. When they pulled up to the roadblock and asked them to get out, she couldn't hear their commands. The FBI became very angry and was yelling at her. Her son was trying to explain to them, "She doesn't understand you." They grabbed the son, threw him to the ground, and handcuffed them both. And then they went to search her car. And they didn't find any weapons, but they had ammunition and some clips from various guns because, there's coyotes out there. So they took their weapons out before they went, but they had this ammunition. The FBI agents took that ammunition. When they were cleared to go, the gentleman, the son, asked, "Could I get my property back?" And the FBI agent said, "I don't think so." He's never seen his property again. Now, this happened to those two people 3 days in a row. After the first couple days, the roadblocks started moving closer to the refuge where they should have been in the first place. The roadblocks that were there, the treatment of the locals got better. But there was even people stopped in Crane, Oregon, which is 28 miles away, going to and from high school basketball games. They were searched, their vehicles were searched, they were questioned. My mother-in-law lives in Crane, and she wanted to come to watch my son. They had a wrestling tournament. She called and she said, I don't think I can go. I don't think that I could make it through that stress of being searched and questioned and held at gunpoint. Even though there wasn't roadblocks there, they were still pulling people over. Those are just some stories, and there are many, many more, and those aren't the worst. These people had nothing to do with the refuge occupation whatsoever. They're all kind, hardworking, peace-loving people. And what I can see is, hearing these stories, that there was a severe lack of communication between the FBI and the county sheriff, and also in between FBI teams. And there was also absolutely no communication with local landowners. Around the refuge, there's approximately, I think, about 6 ranches in the immediate area. So it's not that hard to figure out who is coming and going from these 6 ranches in a month. The FBI had drones. They had helicopters and planes that were surveilling the refuge at all times. You cannot tell me that they did not know what these people drove, who they were, and yet not a phone call, not a stop and talk to them. And from January 2nd to January 26th, there was absolutely no law enforcement in the vicinity. No one. The press didn't cover this. Even people in Burns, in the city of Burns, didn't know the extent of what happened at these roadblocks. And I have to be honest with you, if I wasn't there and I didn't know these people, I might not have believed it either, because how can my government be doing this to people? I want to emphasize also that the only group in this 1-month occupation that ever pointed a gun or discharged a weapon was a law enforcement personnel. My children all hunt, and from the time they were little and they could pack around a BB gun, as parents we always said, you never, ever point your BB gun at anything you don't intend to kill. I believe that perhaps these elite FBI teams need to take a course in hunter safety. One of the gentlemen I interviewed said it best. He said, "I was guilty until I could prove myself innocent. This should not happen in America." I am here today to implore you, wake up, America. Innocent citizens of the United States should never be afraid of or terrorized by the very officers and agents that have taken an oath to serve and protect them. Thank you.
Oh, those are tough stories. Hi, I'm Cirina, Catinia. I am a journalist and a filmmaker, and I've been covering these issues for almost 12 years now. I first became aware, as Trent and I were talking, of the Kit Laney situation years ago in the Gila National Forest when I was in Lynchburg, Virginia, directing a series which was sponsored by Lucas Oil. So God works in very mysterious ways. He's brought us back together again. And I had started doing a documentary on cowboy poetry because I grew up loving cowboys. And as I started interviewing cowboys, I found out that a lot of them had once lived on all these huge properties, and all of a sudden now are living in these little postage stamp houses in the middle of suburbia. And I started to ask questions. And because I was in Virginia, I found out about the Sisters of the River and Ann Roach. And I went to the river and started interviewing people. And over the next few years, crisscrossed the country many, many times, put many thousands of miles on a production vehicle and slept in tents. And the stories are endless. And Erin, I'm so sorry about what happened to your community. What I want to talk to you about today, hopefully if you guys are up for it, are maybe a few suggestions about what you can do when faced with either a journalist who doesn't understand or somebody who's hostile to you and you're trying to explain these rights to them and these problems to them, because we have a marketing and PR problem. Many, many people in our country, first of all, don't believe what's happening. Like you said, had you not been there, you might not have believed it yourself. And I mean, even my own children, when I first started telling them what I was doing, they thought I was a little bit wacko. Now they're beginning to understand. But let me just, in the words of, did any of you know Henry Lamb before he passed away? I was very fortunate to spend time with two amazing gentlemen before they passed away. One was Ramona's father, Wayne Hage, who I spent many, many hours with on several trips to the ranch. And there's a 2 hours worth of interview with him on one of my websites that very clearly states some of these problems. And the other one was Henry Lamb. I went to Tennessee and I spent time with him. And he said very clearly that what keeps the land and the people together is our value system and the laws that were created to keep the land and the people together. And I think if we're going to preserve America, we first have to preserve those values and those laws and the principles those laws are built upon, or we just won't preserve America. That, I think, is a big part of the problem. Henry also talked to me about the change in mindset. And here I am as a little girl, always wanting to marry a cowboy, and I got a real handsome one behind me at the moment, but unfortunately, we live in an era where a lot of the people place more emphasis on the value of the horse that gentleman is riding than they do on the man himself. There's a reason for that, and it started a long time ago, and what Henry talked about. And Trent, I'm going to give you these interviews. You're welcome to put them up. It's radio. You're welcome to have them. He said, the shift began as two fundamental points of view about the value of life collided. This was many years ago. The traditional American point of view has always held the Judeo-Christian view that human life is the ultimate in this universe, known as the anthropocentric view. Leave it up to Henry to be very clinical. Then arises the biocentric view, which says essentially that human life has no value greater than any other life form, which is the view held by the conservationists and the biologists. Many of them, not all of them, because I believe some of this is now starting to shift. Those are my words. Henry goes on to say, it's the point of view held by modern environmentalism that the life of a rattlesnake is just as valuable as the life of a human being because of the delicate web of interactivity that every life is valuable and the same. And the reason I want to bring this up today is I'm going to be very open and very frank with you because I live in Hollywood. I work in Hollywood. I've spent my career for many, many years working at major studios, managing marketing, distribution, and production and post-production of major features. So I'm around people every day of my life who don't understand and don't believe and need to be educated. And what I'm hoping that we can accomplish today, and we'll see if maybe we can start a dialogue. We do have power. We are not powerless. And social media, which you touched upon and which I will talk on in a minute, can be very valuable for us if we know how to use it. So I had written, Ramona, and I hope it's okay with you, I sent you an email. I wanted desperately to go to Burns, Oregon to somehow help Ammon and the people that were with him to communicate with the press a little bit more effectively. There are ways that you can really utilize some techniques when you're dealing with the press. And the first of which is, because we're all so familiar with the issues, we tend to just ramble on. And we get very emotional. And we talk about property rights, and we talk about the Constitution, and we talk about redress. Well, the average person who's a skateboarder in Chicago doesn't know, doesn't care, doesn't have a dog in that show, right? So when you talk to the press, first of all, how many of you have actually had a chance to be interviewed by anybody in the press? Good. How many of you were comfortable? Good. So here's what we need to do, is we need to clarify our message, because what they'll do is they'll pull little tiny pieces of what you're saying to them, and they'll either quote you out of context, as we've seen, or they'll just say parts of it, or the audience on the other end will just zone out because it's too much. It's just too much. These are huge issues that involve all of us on a daily basis. So the first thing to remember is learn who you're talking to. Whether we like it or not, we need to spend time on the other side. We need to get to know all of these organizations, perhaps even from the inside out. I've joined some of them so I can meet the people at the Sierra Club locally, so I can find out what they're all excited about. I went with the wilderness, one of the wilderness societies sent me on a 15-day trip with veterans, and we tented in the middle of the wilds of Arizona, and I watched them around a campfire at night talking about how they were going to move the local ranchers off the land because they had seen a cheetah up in the mountains, and the cheetah needed room to range. And I didn't say anything because it helps educate me about what their values are, and it helps us then talk to them in a way that they're going to understand using language that they understand. So find out what your issues are, what their issues are, and then find no more than perhaps 3 points very clearly that you can make when you're being interviewed. So if you're talking about rights, what are those rights? What have they violated? Be very visual and very specific. Did they break into your house and steal stuff? Did they kill your cows? Did they bulldoze your cattle into a hole in the middle of your ranch and kill them? Did they go onto the land and did they break down the water tanks and cut them in half so that they could never be used again? Those are visual images that people won't believe, but we'll also get into ways you can prove this. So find no more than 1, 2, or 3 issues that you can deal with very, very clearly and discuss it in visual terms, because the people that are ultimately going to be reading or seeing this are people who don't understand the issues. Those are the people we want to reach. We want to get those skateboarders in Chicago because they have a network and they have families, and then they start talking, and it's very, very valuable. So what are some of the messages that we want to then say? I think that what we would really, it would behoove us to begin even right now doing some PR, some very positive PR on behalf of the ranchers and farmers and anyone who's affected by these issues now when there's not a major crisis like in Burns. So what can we do to get the word out about how amazing these families are and what they do for our country on a daily basis in a way that helps promote positive PR? So ranchers love the land and they take care of it. They're the true environmentalists, as Trent has said. They live on it just like we do. The other thing is, for example, when you kick a rancher or farmer off their property, somebody in the city is going to say, well, they can just go out and get a new home. They don't understand that those homes have been built from the ground up, many of them, by our ancestors or by our families from scratch, and we just can't hire a real estate agent to go out and find us a new home, right? How do you replace the ranch at the Hage property? You just don't. You don't go out and get a new one. So we need to maybe address some of those issues. Agencies are not protecting the land the way they say they are. And I'm going to just really quick show you this. Many of you might have seen it, but I'm not sure if you have. I'm going to play this really quick, and we'll talk about this. This was taken. I was at a retirement party for Mary Martin, who was head of the Park Service in the Mojave, and it was the public was invited. I had every right to photograph. I put the camera down during the time this person was shooting, but I left it running on the table because I didn't want to intimidate what she was saying. I wanted her to feel free to say anything she wanted to say. So this is the result of that.
So, okay, and so we had this meeting, and I'm sitting there, and I believe Mary was there too. And well, what's the value? Do you have an idea what the value of this mine is? Yeah, around 40 million.
It's not, oh, okay, sorry.
Well, I came from DC lands, and I knew how much money was in the bank. And I knew the Western region didn't have the money, but I was thinking, well, let's see, we can take 20 million from Southeast, because they never spend their money. We can take maybe 10 million from Omaha, because they never spend their money. And I'm trying to figure out where we're going to get this 40 million. And the people I left in the DC office are going to kill me. And so anyway, I forget how long it took us to acquire it.
Forever.
It did take forever because we went out to the mine, and the owners were two little guys that had been in the Second World War. This mine was in operation in the 40s, and you have to do a chain of title. It was this thick. I swear it was. And Ralph Minehan, our attorney's going like this. We didn't know what to do. We called everybody in the country. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody wanted to touch it. But anyway, we did get it appraised, and we did acquire for $2.5 million, which I stole the money from Washington to acquire it. Lands isn't always supported because we're the bad guys. We come in and we take this land, and we always take it for less than it's worth.
These acres don't include the ranches, and the ranches are very unique. They're not simple transactions involving land being bought and sold. They're involving extremely complex transactions, leases involving all sorts of guzzlers and improvements and water rights and interesting legal complexities, very, very dynamic. And again, Mary focused the issue, brought people together, people who would never think about working together, and she brought us all together. So, again, thank you so much for bringing it on.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a little bit hard to hear. The reason I left it really raw like that was actually purposely. I wanted it to look like a surveillance video. The video went out and had, in the first 2 days, over 500,000 views, and went on to...
Well, as you know, you don't know.
It went on to be seen millions of times, and it was covered on some of what I call the alternative news. Alex Jones did a couple of pieces on it. And the reason it worked is because it was very, very simple. It was her standing up and saying, "Lands, we're the bad guys. We go in, and we always take the land, and we always take it for less than it's worth." I didn't say it. I didn't even make any comments, positive or negative, about it. I just put it out there and let her say it herself. And then she starts talking about the two little World War II guys and how the mine was worth $40 million and they stole it for 2.6 or whatever it was. And how they took money from other agencies, basically illegally, that was not appropriated for that, and they spent it. So those were three things that remained culpable. They were culpable. And it resonated, and we were able to get the word out to people who normally wouldn't watch something like this, because nobody really wants people to steal from them. When they hear it from us, they don't believe it. It's unbelievable. But when we can do small things like this and we can show what they're doing, it becomes believable. So here's what I would suggest, a few things. Whenever you go out, take your phone with you. You have the right to record the FBI and the police. If you've got your hands up in the air, stick that phone in your pocket and turn it on so at least you get the sound. Record what happens. They are not allowed by law to take that phone away from you or to confiscate it, and they cannot erase any of its contents legally. Unless they have a search warrant, they can't even take it from you. So just know your rights. Now, the main thing is, when you're in a situation like that, don't get confrontational. The first thing you need to say, if you're at a roadblock, is, I choose to remain silent. Don't let the urge to win the situation get in the way. Just say, I choose to remain silent. And then don't say another word until you say, may I go now? There's attorneys in the room, I'm sure, that can corroborate this. I choose to remain silent. May I go now? They cannot detain you without a warrant. Now they will, but legally they cannot. The reason this is important is if you establish this immediately, you are now establishing that if you can take them to court eventually, even if it's a group of us together, that we have obeyed the law, we were not confrontational, we did what they told us to do, but we let them know that it was not legal. And the other thing is, you do not have the right to search my car without a warrant. If they say to you, well, we just want to go look, and you go, well, okay, you've given them permission. Don't do that. Very clearly say, without a warrant, you do not have the right to search my car. Now, they might do it anyway, but that puts them in the wrong, and then you have that. And if you can document that using your camera, you have further evidence, or get somebody in your family that's in the car to record it. It's very, very valuable. The one thing, you do have the right to photograph. If they say move back, you're impeding police procedures, you just go, okay, stepping back, and you take one step back. Following their orders, you take one step back. You are allowed to film that event unless they can say to you you're definitely impeding the proceedings or you're doing something illegal. You as a citizen of the United States are allowed to film that event. Now, what I was going to suggest to everybody is that you go, and if you're in your community and you're reporting to somebody like Trent, or you're going to give something to Sustaining America website, you can become, I give you a badge, you can become our cub reporter out in the field. You'll be a reporter. Go get yourself registered as press. Join an association and get yourself a press badge. Then go to your local sheriff or police or whoever regulates the press within your community and register with them as press. That gives you additional rights that you may not have as an individual citizen. Now, they can say you can't film because there's no reason for you to be filming, and you can say, no, but I am documenting these proceedings and this is necessary. And then you can continue filming. You have the right to film from public places, looking over federal buildings. They cannot stop you. If you're on private land, obviously get permission and get it on camera if you can. If you don't have time, obviously, for them to sign a release, just say, hey, I'm shooting for Trent Luce. Do I have your permission to get an interview with you? And then do that. So where the roadblocks are concerned, legally they only have between 10 and 20 minutes. Now this may vary from state to state, but in most states, they only have between 10 and 20 minutes before they have to let you go, unless there's reason to arrest you. If they say to you, we will get a warrant, then you say, go ahead, get a warrant, and you wait, and if they don't have it in 10 to 20 minutes, you ask them again, may I go now? And they'll probably say yes, because they know they can't keep you. So what I'm hoping will happen also, social media, you know, I call it anti-social media. It's a fact of life. The new generations, that's how they get their news. They don't watch television much. The Fox News piece was wonderful, and it was seen by a lot of people. They actually did use a lot of my footage in there, too. But I think a lot of the people that watched it are people like us who already know the issues, and what we want is we want the other side to see this. So how many here have a Twitter account? You know what I would love you guys to do? Don't wince. If you would all go out and get a Twitter account, then I tweeted about Trent starting this symposium, then every single one of you can retweet that, and we have a Twitter brigade. And that means a lot. I get between, just without even trying, 15, 30,000 people tweeting, you know, being hit by my tweets every week. And all I have to do is put a tweet up and then they retweet it. So that's the way conversation happens now, and it's really important. If you have a Facebook page, use that, or create a community page amongst your community, like Burns, Oregon. But there's one other thing I want to say, and I do want to emphasize this. The people on the other side, including those FBI agents that threaten, are people too. And I can't imagine that they go home at night to their families and somehow don't feel guilty about what they're being told to do. I just wrestle with that. So I would urge everyone that's making public comments to be respectful. And is my time up, Trent?
I'm not shutting you down.
Okay. I just urge you to be respectful. Don't call names. Don't abuse the other side, because then nobody's going to listen to you. They're just going to think you're a hothead. And who wants that? It's like your teenage daughter. You know, you catch them smoking and you start screaming at them. What do you think they're going to do the first time you turn your back? They're going to have another cigarette, right? But if you tell them, I love you so much, I'm not telling you to tell the FBI agents you love them, but I love you and I'm worried about you, and this is what happens when you smoke, then the vision of that black lung might keep them from smoking. So I just think we need to do this with love. And you have to know your rights. You have to know you have the right to photograph. You have to know what to do when you're stopped. Get yourself a press pass and register. Get a Twitter account, please, 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 because then we can retweet each other and we'll follow each other on Twitter, and that's really, really effective. And also, get more familiar with what the other side is doing. You know the phrase divide and conquer? It's amazing to me, if you really truly look underneath the surface, a lot of the people that we are saying we don't like, the environmentalists, really want the same thing we do. A lot of them want the same thing we do. We want to protect our land, we want to feed our people, and so do they, but they're being misled and they're being lied to, because who benefits? Big business, government benefits. If they divide us, then they conquer us. So the press themselves also want to tell the truth. I'm a press person, and if somebody tells me, you need to understand this issue more clearly, and this is why you're wrong, then I have to listen to them, because I don't want to misreport. If you tell a reporter coming into a Burns, Oregon meeting that you're going to be watching what they report, and you're going to make sure it's going to be accurate, or you're going to go to their editor and complain about them, I guarantee you they'll think twice before they put up a false report. Maybe not, but I'm hoping they will. I was traveling in South Carolina covering the ranchers who are losing their property there, the black farmers who got their 200 acres after the Civil War, and a lot of them are being zoned off their property now for many of the same reasons they're doing it to the farmers and ranchers out west. And I tried to get the media to cover what we were doing to get the word out. Nobody would cover it. And there was this young African-American reporter at a station, and she covered the story because her news editor was out of town. And I called her a week later to thank her for covering the story, and she had been fired for covering the story. So the media have a lot at stake too. You know, I love animals just as much as everybody else does, but I also love people too. And I think, in a way, when you think about it, ranchers and farmers are the critically endangered species here. And we need to do something to get the word out and to spread the positive message about them. It's about food, it's about water, it's about our shelter. And if we don't have those, then we have no haven. And we have to band together, because if we try to do it each in our own areas alone, nobody's going to hear us. It's going to be standing in the middle of the woods, yelling out, "Stop this." Nobody's going to hear you. We have to do it together. And we have to start before it's really critical, before we get into a situation like what happened to Ammon and his group. So know the other person, clarify your message, keep it short, keep it honest, be respectful, and let's all work together to get the word out. And I'm going to make you a limited time offer today. If any of you want me to come into your community and spend a day or two working with your people to help you handle the press or help you do a PR campaign on your community and what you're doing there, I'm happy to do it. Just help me with the transportation and a place to stay. That's all we need to do. And I'm grateful to all of you, and I love you.
Thank you, Cirina. Anybody have a question or comment? Come here first, and I'm right there. I'll hold this, Waddy.
This is a comment. I personally never thought I'd be here talking about this and talking about our government like this. I just never thought it happened.
I thought there'd be part two, and I never thought I'd see somebody from Hollywood actually see my side of the story.
You said it, I didn't.
Yes.
The story that you told about the roadblocks and so on, has that been recorded? Can we get a video of that?
Is this on? A video of the recordings, or?
Of you telling that story?
You've got the audio.
I think they're.
I've got it on my site, and I think Protect the Harvest is going to put it on their site.
But we
as
can
well.
get
They're
all of
available.
them and put them together too.
Yes, we can make them available.
I'm Larry Williams from Boise, Idaho, and the deal in Oregon has really, really bothered me. I was greatly concerned because some of the old-time Harney County people that I thought would step up did not, and it seemed like we just kind of threw those people to the wolves. So my question is, the only way that anything's going to be done is to get that back out into the media and get it publicized. And I go back to the Ruby Ridge days. Some of you maybe remember that, when Gary Spence, the attorney, he may have been a terrible attorney, but he was a great public figure for holding up rights. So what can we do to find a Gary Spence or something to get that back out into the public eye?
Tim, that's for you.
Well, I think we're trying to do it right here. Unfortunately, for the most part, we're preaching to the choir today, but we're prepared to put these videos together, and the factual information that's in these videos is very important. And I think having people like Erin, who lived through this, present the emotions that those people went through, I think is a big part of it. And I think it will. I think with the people that don't understand, it will play very well, and we're going to work on that very hard. We've got a committee that's committed not to, or a group that's committed not to let this thing drop after this symposium is over. You're gonna see this stuff coming around, and we're gonna work on it. And Larry, I think you're exactly right. We've talked about this for years and years and years, and now is the time to do something about it. And we're getting the tools And thanks to Lucas Oil and some other organizations like Smith and Edwards that have, Kathy Smith, that's come forward and to support this, we will have the tools to reach people where we didn't have before.
Chuck Miller, Brush, Colorado. Yes, the sheriff is the authority, the top authority within a county. And I understand you have an election coming up there. And I would put a challenge out to Cirina to please go there, film a public, what do we want to call it, Trent, where you get the candidates for sheriff to publicly debate, and the people in the community ask, how are we going to be protected into the future? And get that back on YouTube, and that might be a way to really open people's eyes and do some good for both.
Thank you. My email, and any of you are welcome to email me, is news, N-E-W-S, at Catinia.us, like my last name. One of the other reasons it's really important to get this stuff out and up on the internet is that once it's there, it does get populated and they can't take it down. It's another long story, but the U.S. government does have a backdoor into each and every one of your computers, mine included. And over the years, I have been burglarized 3 times. I have had tapes picked up by a fake UPS person, 75 hours worth of tape, and never to be seen or heard from again. Luckily, we did field dubs, but 3 weeks ago, I had 100 terabytes of media and admin files and contracts going back to the 90s wiped off of my computers. And then a few days after that, my main websites were taken down. So I wanted to urge every one of you to have an off-site backup for anything that you do, including your paper. So keep a double backup at your home, and keep a backup off-site with somebody that's not associated with you that they can go and find. In other words, you know, just a friend of a friend, and have them keep it in their garage so that you can't lose it. But yes, I'm happy to go into that community.
Todd McFarland.
Jim wants to
I
follow up.
want to make a little plug right now. We in Harney County have put together a newspaper, and this was at the suggestion of Todd McFarland, which was a brilliant suggestion, and thank you very much, Todd. We've run with it. We've come up with our first issue. It's called a Malheur Redress, and it basically will be dealing with these issues on a local basis. We are very much going to be involved in the sheriff's race. We tried to get enough funding to get out for the primary. We didn't make it till the very few last days. So, at any rate, we are moving forward with the Malheur Redress as a newspaper. We put it out in hard copy. We're going to do 3 of them in hard copy, provided we get the funding, and then we're going to go online with it. And if you go to malheurredress.com, you'll see the newspaper on there, and I think our people have done a really good job. And once again, Todd McFarland was the instigator of that, and I thank him very much for that.
Thanks for that, Tim. This is Todd. So I only suggested that because we had done that in our county a couple of years ago, and we were able to see just how much of a difference it could make in our local politics. And a couple things I want to say. I think what we just talked about, both the intimidation side, but especially the media side and getting the message out, is probably one of the most important things we can talk about here, because, and I hate to use exactly this language about it, but from my perspective, it's an area where, if you want to call it this side of the fence or this side of the debate, we are getting our butts kicked all over the map. And we have been for decades, and we've got to figure out how to change that. The other thing I want to say, just reiterating what Cirina said, and there's a lot of attorneys in this room, I think would be surprised how many there are, but as one of them, I want to just echo what she said. The only way really to protect our rights is by exercising them. Use it or lose it. We have to exercise those rights. Thanks, Cirina, and all of you.
Thank you, Todd, for now giving the floor to every attorney to try to outdo that.
Well, exactly. That's the point. We got one going, let's get another one. My advice, in conjunction with establishing your rights, is that if you know you're going to be encountering law enforcement, and I advise all my clients of this, have your lawyer's cell phone handy and make sure you have them, and if you can have them present, at least have them to where you can call them and get their advice immediately. Because you'd be surprised at how much federal law enforcement officers will back up. I've had them back away from my clients just by the mere statement, I'd like to have my attorney present here.
Can I say something really fast to that effect? There were people at these roadblocks that said, do you have a warrant? I want to see your warrant. May I go now? What right do you have to search my vehicle? And they didn't give them permission, but people said that you have automatic weapons pointed at you. At that point, you're not going to call a lawyer. And also, someone was killed the night before. And so I understand what you're saying, but in that circumstance, it was really hard. I asked a cousin of mine, why didn't you video it? He said, he had some expletives in there, but he said, are you kidding me? If I reached for anything, I would be dead right now. You've got to be crazy. So where I agree with you on that, we also have the reality of it and the shock, especially the first day of people not knowing what they were going into. We have to, think about that too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we know that in many cases they're not going to listen, they're not going to do it right, but the point is we have to do it right. So we have to establish that we have done it right. And you're right, I forgot to say I want my attorney present. I would suggest that everybody that works on a farm or a ranch put a dash cam in your car. Just have the dash cam going, and when you walk towards that roadblock, walk so that the dash cam and these GoPros have very wide field of view, so they will see everything all around you, and they're very cheap to buy, and you can run them forever, and they're very sort of under the radar. But, oh, by the way, if you do get Twitter, I want to be the first person you follow, at Cirina, C-I-R-I-N-A. I want a whole bunch of them in my hotel when I'm on my phone tonight. You guys are going to be tweeting.
The problem